Could be better, could be worse.
Mark chooses to sleep on the street with his dog instead of sleeping inside a warm shelter. He says this tough reality is easier than feeling dehumanized by shelter rules.
But you aren't a human. You're a slave. You're like, you come in, you got to do what I say. I mean, yeah, it's safer in all that sense, but it's worse than jail.
Mark is not alone in feeling his individual needs can't be met in a shelter. It's estimated that around 2,700 people are homeless in Vancouver, and only a fraction either can or are willing to use high or low barrier shelters.
90% of the shelters I've ever been in, they just looked at you like you're all the same. Even though it's very clearly, if you spend a few seconds, you can tell the difference between the homeless people. But yet, most of those places, they weren't properly trained and maybe overworked and overwhelmed. They couldn't cater to the different homeless people.
Adrian Smith, a homeless advocacy lawyer, says the barriers set up in shelters are impossible to manage for many people. The strict rules can alienate those with pets, families, transgender people, and people with mental health issues.
The lives of homeless people are often chaotic, and when that comes inside, it can be shocking. But I think it's also fairly infantilizing and quite insulting to suppose that people who are homeless now won't be able to have suitable housing and don't have the skills to maintain suitable housing. I think if we treat people like responsible adults, give them an opportunity to behave like that, they will. And there's no opportunity to do that in the shelter system.
One shelter, Union Gospel Mission, told us that they try to be as inclusive as they can, but some barriers are necessary to run a shelter. They say these rules help guide their counselors' limited attention to those people that are ready to transition into more permanent housing. Despite differing views on shelter rules, everyone interviewed agreed on one thing: more permanent housing, not shelters, is the only fix for the homeless crisis in Vancouver. Laura Taylor in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.